Thank you for joining us. This now is the second half of our special event with Alan Dershowitz, the world-famous legal scholar regarded as one of the most distinguished defenders of individual rights and the best-known criminal lawyer in the world. He has tirelessly fought against state-sponsored censorship and continues to remind the world that anti-Semitism and oppression are issues that concern us all. He is one of the most distinguished defenders of Israel and America's most public Jewish defender, and in fact is Israel's lead attorney in the court of public opinion. Professor Alan Dershowitz will share his views on current and other concerns following these messages.
Hands. They've always done amazing things. They helped us touch the sky and explore what's beyond it. They create beauty, emotion, wonder, hope, joy. They can bring imagination to life, save a life, and change the world. We believe all hands can do something extraordinary, and we can't wait to see what you'll do with yours. Roll up your sleeves and create like never before. Introducing Sprout by HP.
Do you have any concerns about your health and life? Do you know that new scientific discoveries are extending healthy lifespans right now? Get the latest, life-changing free information for your health. Life Extension, leading research since 1977 with the latest for you to live a healthier, longer life. Get the latest free life-changing information for you at healthandlife.org. We're back with Alan Dershowitz. Alan, speaking of controversy and defending Israel, a foremost defender of Israel in the world court, I would say, everyone says, you've defended so many people, and you yourself have currently been accused of things. Tell us about it.
It's quite remarkable. You know, you live your life, you're 76 years old, you retire from Harvard, and you're a person like me who is so cautious and risk averse. I've never smoked a marijuana cigarette. I've never, to my knowledge, ever violated the law. I try so hard to stay within the law. I'm so cautious and risk averse in my life. I'm very, very happily married to a wonderful woman for almost 29 years. And you wake up the day before New Year's and you find out that two lawyers acting utterly unprofessionally, and they're suing me for defamation for saying they've acted unprofessionally. I welcome the opportunity to prove that. Have put your name in a pleading in a case that you're not even a party to. You're not even a party. You know nothing really about this case. And in the course of trying to get their client to be allowed to intrude into a case, they say without an affidavit, without anything. And by the way, Alan Dershowitz and Prince Andrew both had sex with this 16-year-old or woman when she was 16 years old. I don't know the woman. I've never heard of her. I don't know anything about her. It comes absolutely out of the blue. And then you find out you're not a party to the case, so you can't even make a motion to strike. You can't sue the lawyers or the woman for defamation, even though it's a complete and total lie, because they put it in a legal pleading, and legal pleadings are immune, they say, from defamation actions. They refuse to repeat the allegation outside of the legal proceeding, so you can sue them for defamation. And so you do what I did, you have to go on television, you categorically deny it, and you accuse the lawyers of unprofessional conduct, whereupon they sue you for defamation, which means at the very least they have to be subjected to cross-examination, and the woman has to be subject to cross-examination. She's trying to avoid being deposed because she knows the minute she's deposed and cross-examined, her whole story will fall apart. I'll give you an example. She says, I had sex with her on a private island in the Caribbean that was owned by one of my clients. I was on that island for one day with my wife, my daughter, Professor Michael Porter of the Harvard Business School, his wife, and 4 other members of the family. We were never out of each other's view. She said I had sex with her in a private ranch in New Mexico. Yes, I was at that ranch for 1 hour with my wife, my daughter, and 2 other friends. The house wasn't even built. We just went there to see it being built. She says I had acrobatic sex with her on an airplane, with her and another woman at the same time. At one point, she also has me at an orgy with Stephen Hawking. Now that's an image you don't want to keep in your head for too long. But this is a woman who's just made up everything. She made up a dinner she had with Bill Clinton. She made up a dinner she had with Al Gore and his wife. And yet the lawyers put this in a pleading. It's absolutely remarkable. Now I'll tell you a story that you won't even believe to show you that it gets even worse. So once the story breaks and I get on television and I say it's absolutely untrue and I'm going to make sure that this woman ends up going to jail for putting a false pleading for it, I get a phone call from a lovely man who I had worked with previously on a case. Is with a prominent law firm. In fact, it's in right here, Fort Lauderdale, right near here. A very famous firm called Boies, Flexner, and Schilling, or Boies, Schilling, and Flexner. David Boies, one of those famous lawyers in the world. So the lawyer, the senior partner in the firm, calls me. His name is Carlos Sayers. And he said, I'd worked with you previously in cases we had been friends. I'd like to help you. And I said, great, I'd love to have your help. I really need a lawyer in Broward County. Great. So he says, I would like very much to help you, but I have to check with the managing partner of the firm. I said, well, I know David Boies is a friend of mine. I'll call him. And no, you don't have to call David Boies. He's up in New York. I just have to check with the local managing partner of the firm, a man named Stuart, I'll think of his name in a minute, Singer, Stuart Singer. Let me check with him. He emails me back the next day. I've checked with Stuart Singer. We're on board. We'd love to help you. Send us all the material. So I send him all the material, the public material, plus a 6-page detailed memorandum that I wrote indicating all of my strategy, how we're going to win this case, how we're going to go about doing it. And I send it to him, and he reads it. And he writes back basically saying, great, and here's some additional authority that you might need to help you win the case. Happy story, good story. 2 or 3 days later, I get an email from him saying, terribly sorry, but we hadn't done a conflict check and now we've discovered we have a conflict, and I can't even tell you what the conflict is. And then a lovely lawyer writes to me and says, the conflict is that one of our partners, Jonathan Schilling, is now the chairman of the board at Columbia, and we've decided not to do any cases involving academics. Well, that didn't sound plausible to me. First, I'm a former academic. Second, the man who's accusing me at Casal is a professor. So that didn't seem so compelling. And that, I thought, was the end of it. I wrote back saying, it's too bad. If you have a conflict, I'm sorry, you can't represent me. Then I learned what the conflict is. They are representing the woman who accused me. After getting all of my material, all of my confidential notes, they decided to represent the woman. They claimed they had been representing her, that David Boies has been representing her for a year earlier, and they didn't know it. And so their answer is they're going to keep isolated now the 2 lawyers who agreed to represent me from the lawyer down here who is in the next office from them, who's going to be representing her. It is just absolutely remarkable. In all of my professional life, I have never heard of a law firm offering to help somebody and then going and taking the case of the person who is falsely accusing him. So, this has been a difficult time for me the last couple of months. I thought I'd have an easy retirement. I'd be able to continue to write my books and do all these things. And now I'm involved in 5 different pieces of litigation around this case with extraordinary legal bills and taking all of my time. The one thing I hope is that it doesn't take time from all the time I now devote to, working on behalf of Israel, representing Israel in the International Criminal Court if the case were brought there. As you know, I work with Chabad and do lots of pro bono cases on behalf of Jews all over the world who are in trouble. I'm going to try my best not to let this interfere with all of the work I do on a pro bono basis, but it is interfering because I spend now hours and hours every day on this case. I can't just let it rest. I can't just let it disappear. People have said, well, it's disappeared from the headlines. That's not good enough for me. I have to prove conclusively, beyond any doubt, that this woman made up this story and that these lawyers knew this woman made up the story and yet were prepared to put it in. So I will not rest until these lawyers are appropriately disciplined. I will not rest until this woman goes to jail for perjury, for falsely swearing under oath to facts that simply never occurred. And in the end, I have the evidence. I mean, I have all the evidence to prove I was at this place only one day, I was at this place only one day. She's evading deposition. She refuses to be deposed. She also won't tell us when she claims this happens, because if she tells us when she claims this happened, I can then prove I was in Australia or I was in Israel or I was not anywhere around. But if she doesn't tell us and I have to testify where I was, she can then make her story fit the facts. And so it's one of these situations where I will be probably fighting for the next 2 years to defend my reputation. And again, it's just so remarkable. You wake up one morning and somebody you've never heard of, a woman with a history of lying, a history of prostitution, makes an allegation like this and is believed. How anybody could believe her, I don't know, but there are some people who do. And I get phone calls, I get emails from people believing her and accusing me of all these terrible things. So, I will fight as hard for my reputation as I fought for my clients and if I fought for other causes that I agree with. I will try hard not to let it interfere with what I'm doing, but inevitably it has an effect. I mean, I now understand much better the story of Yosef and Potiphar's wife when Yosef was falsely accused in there. And of course, that story, as you know, all of the 10 Commandments are sourced in the first book of Genesis. If you look at every one of the 10 Commandments, it grows out of a story in Bereshit, in the first book. And of course, thou shalt not bear false witness comes directly out of the story of Joseph and Potiphar. And these are lawyers, and this is a woman who was born false witness. And I won't rest until the world knows that.
Alan, speaking of Torah and going from one extreme to the other, what is the role you see Chabad playing in today's world?
Oh, Chabad is just amazing. I was recently, I'm one of the people who is supporting an enterprise in Israel. It's called Space IL, and it's a group of individuals, not the government, who are trying to become the first people other than the United States and the major, to send a rocket ship to the moon. And they're working very hard on it. And the other day there was a big event, and they showed what it would look like. And there's this rocket landing on the moon. And I was sure when they opened up the rocket, a Chabad rabbi would walk out. Because we know that the first person on the moon will be a Chabad rabbi. He'll be waiting for the rest of us to arrive. I first really encountered Chabad, well, I first encountered Chabad in 1951, when my closest friend was a young man named Tzvi Groner. We were in high school together, and his uncle was the Rebbe's personal assistant, personal secretary. And we several times went over to the Eastern Parkway headquarters just to have lunch with his uncle. And this young man came out a few times. The young man had just been made the Rebbe. I think he was made the Rebbe in 49 or 50. This was 51, 52, 53. He would come out and give me a little bechina, a little test about what we were learning. And he was just the nicest man. but I didn't know who he was. I just knew he was a rabbi in the local area. And then, of course, I've had many, many encounters with Chabad over the years. As was mentioned, I'm the faculty advisor to Chabad at Harvard, and they do just absolutely remarkable work. My next encounter with them was when I was in the Soviet Union in the 1970s. I went to the Soviet Union on a number of occasions to represent dissidents, and I would go to not only Moscow, but I'd go to smaller areas, and I'd be on this little Aeroflot plane, and there'd be me and a Chabad rabbi. Inevitably, because everywhere there were Jews, there was always a Chabad rabbi. Everywhere there were Jewish prisoners, there was a Chabad rabbi and a Jewish lawyer, hopefully. And so they do absolutely remarkable work, and they do work on behalf of prisoners, they do work on behalf of students, they do work that just is amazing and remarkable. I've told the Harvard Business School they should do a program on how Chabad, the business plan of Chabad, how they are able to get these remarkable shluchim, all of whom are charismatic and wonderful and non-judgmental, and how they have spread their word and spread their aura all over the world. It's just amazing. I was in Cambodia, and there were a group of Chabad rabbis in the little place with the elephants, just elephants and a few Jews in Chabad. And anywhere you go, there's Chabad. So my yarmulke, I won't say my yarmulke is off, my yarmulke is on, but for Chabad.
Well, here we are discussing elephants and Chabad, but we have to also talk about your books. You've written about 30 books, and you have a new one, actually. Tell us about it.
Well, I love writing. I write every day. There are people in this audience who would probably be very surprised to know that I write books, because I was a terrible high school student. I have to tell you the secret. I was a real bum in high school, and there are a few people here who know that from personal experiences. And I almost didn't get into college. I made it by the skin of my teeth. My Rabbi Zuref, called me in one day and said, Dershowitz, you got a good mouth on you, but brain not so much. So you should figure out, this is an Orthodox rabbi, you should figure out something you can do using your mouth, but not your brain. He said, I have two suggestions. One, you could be a lawyer, or second, you could be a conservative rabbi. He couldn't even pronounce the word reform. But I wasn't smart enough to be a rabbi, so I became a lawyer. And I love to write. I'm just finishing my 32nd book in 33 years, so it's almost a book a year. A lot of my books are about Israel. I wrote, The Case for Israel, The Case for Peace, The Case Against Israel's Enemies, The Case for Moral Clarity. I have a book here that I'll be signing afterward, called Terror Tunnels, The Case for Israel's Just War Against Hamas, that I wrote this summer when we were the first people allowed into the tunnels before the war began. I actually was there before almost any media person was there. I saw the tunnels. I had dinner a few nights later with the Prime Minister, and I told him about the experience of being in the tunnels. It was clear to me that Israel would have to stop. We thought there were 25 tunnels. There were something like 45 tunnels like that. And they were all tunnels of death. They weren't tunnels used to bring products. They were only tunnels used to send death squads. The tunnel I was in was just yards away from a kibbutz kindergarten with 50 some odd children in the kindergarten. They were the targets. And there was dynamite in the tunnels. There were little train tracks to kidnap people, to take their bodies after they've been killed, to trade them. And so I wrote a book about that. And my newest book, as I mentioned, is going to be about Abraham, the world's first but certainly not last Jewish lawyer. What I wanted to do in my retirement time was to write more and more books. As I said, I love writing, and I write because I want people to read my books. This book, Terror Tunnels, the first one I did is an electronic book, an ebook. And as a result of that, I was able to get it out. I finished writing it just when the war was over. And I was able to get it out online within about a month after the war was over, when still there was some fighting going on, and then they were able to publish it in hardcover form about 2 months later. But it's amazing with today's technology. I get up in the morning at 8 o'clock, I watch the news, And I say at 8:15 to my wife, I have to write a column about this. And I sit down, I write it, I finish it by 10. I send it into my secretary, she sends it in, and by 11 it's online. So from 8 in the morning to 11, 3 hours from the idea to getting it out and having people read it. It's just amazing what the technology allows you to do, and it just keeps me on my toes because I have at least one good idea a day, I hope, and I like to put those ideas into 1,000 words and send it out. So I love writing, I love reading, I love the academic life. I miss my students. This is the first year in 50 years I haven't taught. First time in 50 years I haven't taught. You must miss your students too. I just loved, I taught both college and law school. So I used to teach 18-year-old kids a course called Where Does Your Morality Come From? And it was a way of exploring with young kids right out of high school where their morality comes from, religion, family, experience. And I miss the teaching, but the writing kind of makes up for it a little bit. And talking to audiences like you makes me very happy and very comfortable. And if there is time, I'd love to take at least a couple of questions from you to see what's on your mind.
Alan, this has been a great privilege and a great pleasure. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, and good luck on your great show.